All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our third session of Her Seat at the Table, 20th Century Women Designers to the Present. Philadelphia, and of course, my wonderful colleague and co-teacher is Alyssa Velasquez. So thank you for joining us again. Just quickly in review, our first session at Women in Industrial Design. Our second session last week looked particularly at women working in the field of ceramics. And today, Alyssa is going to give us a glimpse into the world of women working in lighting design, which is a little bit different from our previous two sessions, just in terms of the impact of lighting being both task focused, but also very environmental and ambient. So you're in for a treat today. And then next week, I will lead the final session and we'll look at women in furniture design. So sit back and enjoy. And that's what I'm going to do. And looking forward to learning from Alyssa today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Rachel. Again, if I am too low for you, I will be projecting, but feel free to turn up your volume in case I am speaking too silently throughout the course of today's session. Unlike last week's course, where most of the material discussed was around ceramics, in today's class we'll cover a wide range of mediums, from glass to metal, clay, and most importantly, electricity. Since the invention of the light bulb in the 19th century, electrical lighting has been transformed through extraordinary feats of innovation and design. From the lighting of our homes to the communities and cities we live, lighting has become more high-tech than ever before. And these lamps and chandeliers that we'll cover today range from machine-age metal frames to 3D printed plastic whorls to individual dandelion seeds attached to LEDs in a lattice of electrically conduit bronze. Before leading with some of our department's newest acquisitions, I want to begin today with a landmark event in scholarship, the reading of Clara Driscoll's correspondence in the scholarship on Tiffany Studios. Louis Comfort Tiffany employed dozens of artisans. Given that Tiffany considered his name to be a brand, he rarely spoke publicly of designers, whether male or female, who worked for him. Tiffany girls is a phrase that is now commonly used to describe the women employed at Tiffany's various companies. The name of many Tiffany girls, including Clara Driscoll, were rediscovered in 2005 through a close reading of her trove of letters housed at the Queen's Historical Society and the Kent State University Library. So from these letters, scholars learned that women did hold leadership roles within Tiffany companies. Although it has been suggested that during his timeline, Tiffany suppressed his women designers in terms of creativity and accolades, Driscoll's letters have suggested otherwise. Clara Driscoll, born Clara Wolcott, in Ohio in 1861, came to Tiffany Studios, New York, after a pretty impressive educational background at the Cleveland Institute of Art and then the Metropolitan Museum of Art School in New York City. Driscoll's academic focus was what was then known as architectural decoration. It was a largely male-dominated field of study that would inform Driscoll's very particular approach to conveying natural forms. Following a strike by Tiffany Studios' unionized male workforce, the lead glazers and the glass cutters union, Louis Comfort Tiffany ordered the hire of a small team of female designers to maintain production in his experimental glass factories, a group that included Clara Driscoll. So Clara Driscoll was a principal designer who led the women's glass cutting department within Tiffany's company and oversaw upwards of 35 women designers at any given time. She was hired in 1888. Driscoll worked on and off for Tiffany until 1909, when she married her first husband, Francis Driscoll. She left her position in accordance with company policy. However, she returned upon Francis's death 4 years later. So in 1896, she quit for the second time, following her second engagement, according to company policy. And then the disappearance of her fiance shortly thereafter cleared the way for Driscoll to return to Tiffany's employ for a third and final time. So in 1909, her career working for Tiffany officially ended when she remarried, according to company policy. So you see the pattern. But from her letters, scholars know that Driscoll grew progressively involved with the business side of Tiffany's companies, aiding in strategic decision-making for the Department of Lamps and Fancy Goods. Required to stay updated on trends and commercial practices, Driscoll often did not have the time to experiment in ways similar to many of her pottery and enamel designers. In addition to the famous dragonfly, poppy, cobweb, and wisteria lamps that are now credited to Driscoll, it is known that she designed inkstands, desk accessories, tea screens, trivets, candlesticks, and even mosaics. So for more information, I highly recommend this wonderful book, A New Light on Tiffany, Clara Driscoll, and the Tiffany Girls. From wisteria and dragonflies to dandelions with our next designer, Lonkiek Gordon. In 2005, Netherlands-born artist Lonkiek Gordon made her first light sculpture, Fragile Future. The work featured delicate dandelion seeds attached to LEDs, powered by bronze electrical currents. Ralph Natua joined in on the development of future versions of Fragile Future, and from that project, Studio Drift was born. So it's a duo design team for Studio Drift. And this object is really a hallmark of the duo's fusion of nature and technology. At Studio Drift, the making of things goes beyond materiality. As Gordon said, we never wanted to make lamps. The design duo maintained that they are conceptual artists, the combination of sculpture, technology, and performance, and exploration of the relationship between nature and mankind. So they kind of see the form of lighting as a means to an end for a greater discussion about nature and mankind. It invites meaningful then conversation on this intersectionality of design, nature, and technology. And in case you don't believe me about the process and what this lamp chandelier actually is, I've included a video for us to watch, the plucking and electrifying of dandelion heads. And hopefully technology will be on our side, and you will all be able to see this as well.
Leave a light on in the wild. Sun coming in a little blind.
Fragile Future is actually inspired by the dandelion itself. The dandelion was just the first flower I knew I could name in nature. I just, since the moment I was small, I knew, oh, this is something that rabbits can eat, and this is what I was looking for at that time.
Bring us back home.
So every year we picking these flowers in the fields, you feel like a farmer. It's a moment of peace and tranquility, finding the biggest flowers and looking for the correct shapes. For us it's a fantastic time of the year.
When the flowers arrive in the studio, they have to become a little bit dry, and then we sort out the big ones.
In the backyard.
The hairs of the seeds break the light, so the light is very soft and very subtle. It becomes an electrical dandelion.
Since I've been a kid, science fiction has always been a big inspiration source for me. I'm always looking for new technologies, and basically I'm the part in the studio that is trying to incorporate this in our work. Lonneke is always very busy with nature, and she looks very closely at natural processes. So the work of our studio is always based on this combination of nature and technology.
Fragile Future is a modular system. It's actually based on the fact that the dandelion is seen as a weed and it spreads very easily. We can have Fragile Future growing over a wall, sometimes it drips down from the ceiling and it becomes a hanging piece. If you really look very closely to everything around us, how things in nature are constructed, it's so complicated and it's so well done and it's also so logical, and then you really wonder if nature is not the high-tech part in our world.
Scientists look at processes in nature and take this, mimic this, and create a new technology from this. So in a way, technology is an evolution from nature.
Hope that the overall visuals gave you a sense of how this chandelier comes together. And I know there was also a question within the chat about there are no wires that are perceptible. So how is this? What are the conduits? The bronze and metal structure is the electrical conduit. So the whole thing is in itself. And then there's also these points of contact that then get electrically plugged into the ceiling in our current installation of Extraordinary Ordinary Things, of which this new acquisition is featured. So moving on from that video, with the holidays being here, before you know it, you can even purchase actually a singular dandelion head that is connected to a battery through Studio Drift. But before frolicking in fields picking dandelions, Studio Drift studied design at the Design Academy and in Hoover and graduated both of them in 2005. As the founders of a Dutch artist collective known for its tech art, they create ongoing series of artistic inventions that explore the relationship between nature, human, technology through collaborative art making and performance. In addition to working with new media and technologies, Studio Drift incorporates elements from the natural world with their product and furniture designs. Over the past decade, their art has evolved into larger site-specific installations. The animated shapes and moving forms are meant to be a poetic and exciting experience to generate conversations about natural phenomenon, American evolution, and technological advances. Just like these flower-esque lamps, which randomly rise and fall as they bloom. Shylight, as it is called, is inspired by a highly evolved natural mechanism called nicanstity. So this happens within certain types of flowers. It regulates when they close at night for self-defense and to conserve their resources. So this principle was meant to relate very much to human emotions. Most man-made objects and buildings have a static form, while everything else in the natural world, including us people, are subject to constant metamorphosis and adaptation to surroundings. So opening in 2015, it took the studio 5 years, but this movement really relies on the robotics that can be controlled by an iPod or an iPad. And Studio Drift also designed shylights with the possibility to be programmed in different ways, such as synchronization with music. So with Shylight, Studio Drift is really exploring these changes that express character and emotions in an installation of inanimate objects. The firm commented on this particular project: Shylight descends to blossom in all its glorious beauty, to subsequently close and retreat upwards again. Our goal with Shylight is to find life, emotion, and personality in dead material. So it's a mentality that was expressed 65 years earlier by Sahara Schatz, when she said, quote, "People will say the lamps are cold merely because they have no decorations, but a lamp is not to be looked at like a piece of sculpture. A lamp is means to be something else," end quote. In Sahara Schatz's opinion, her submission of this table lamp, Model T4S, to a lamp competition jointly sponsored by MoMA and the Happens Company would be met with public resistance. Yes, she argued it was time for American living rooms to be as up to date as American cars, kitchens, and bathrooms. This lamp actually won Schatz a mention from the jury and was one of only 15 selected from the exhibition of over 600 submissions. Schatz's lamp was also among the 10 designs subsequently manufactured by the Happens Company. Schatz was one of 3 women designers recognized in the competition, and she was the only woman awarded for her solo work. So the other 2 women were working within a collective or a part of a company, but this was Scheherazade on her own. She was born in Jerusalem into an artistic family. Over a lengthy career, she moved seamlessly really between abstract art, design, and craft, as well as teaching. She studied at the National Academy of Arts and Crafts in Paris. After completing her studies, she traveled to the United States to teach at the California Labor School in San Francisco. It was there that she became intrigued with plastics and experimented with the medium in paintings, sculpture, mobiles, and functional lamps and dishes. She enjoyed elevating found materials and began to explore metals as well. The integration of copper, iron, and aluminum came from her experience designing the interior of a Boeing airplane in the 1950s, which was just 1 year prior to the New Lamps exhibition of which this was submitted. In both art and design, Schatz earned many awards throughout her career, including the Israeli Prize in 1954. And that same year, she was made head of the Department of Arts and Crafts in Israel's Ministry of Industry. And you'll notice there's a change in material on the neck of this lamp as you move from that red line into the curved and into the shade. That curved portion is malleable, so the shade can be moved in many different directions to provide different lighting within the room. So these lamps are meant to be modular to the needs of the individual. Again, keeping in mind with that ethos of lamps should be as up to date as our automobiles and our kitchens, that these could serve a need, and the need could vary based on households, and that a lamp should then be as adaptable as a kitchen, or as adaptable to get one person to a point A to point B as a car, but in this case, point A to point B being an unlit room and a lit room. Another MoMA featured lamp was the Cobra desk lamp by Greta Gossman. Greta Magnuson Grossman maintained a prolific 40-year career on 2 continents, Europe and North America, with achievements in industrial design, interior design, and architecture. In the late 1920s, Grossman finished a 1-year woodworking apprenticeship in her hometown of Helsingborg, Sweden, and was awarded a scholarship to enroll at Konstfack, the renowned Stockholm Arts Institute. At Konstfack, she excelled in her mastery of technical drawing and focused her original design work on furniture, textiles, and ceramics. In 1933, Grossman received 2nd place for furniture design from the Stockholm Craft Association, becoming the first woman to receive an award in that category. In 1934, the Swedish Society of Industrial Design awarded her a scholarship to travel throughout Europe, and she filed reports of her observations on interior design and architecture for the Women and Home section of the Swedish newspaper Nya Diga Elgenhana. In 1933, Grossman and Kostek classmate Eric Ulrich opened Studio, a store and workshop in Stockholm. From Studio, Grossman took on numerous commissions, designing unique furniture and interiors, garnering abundant press attention and accolades, and exhibited frequently at Galerie Moderne, a cultural mecca in Stockholm at the time. As an entry to a large group exhibition at the National Museum in Stockholm in 1937, Grossman famously designed a crib actually for the Sweden's Princess Birgitta that drew much attention in the press. And in 1933, she married jazz bandleader Bill Grossman, with whom she immigrated to the United States with in 1940, setting up shop in Los Angeles. The unique approach to Swedish modernism that she brought with her when she moved from Stockholm proved to be incredibly popular in the United States. She opened a much publicized shop in Beverly Hills in 1940, selling her own designs built on her business card as Swedish modern furniture, rugs, lamps, and other home furnishings. She attracted celebrity clients such as Greta Garbo, Joan Fontaine, and Gracie Allen, and began making connections that would lead to a number of projects, both from her own shop and from Barker Brothers Modern Shop, launched in 1947, from whom she was designing exclusive pieces and taking interior design commissions. In the late 1940s, Grossman designed a groundbreaking and successful line of lamps for Parker Brothers, later produced by Ralph O. Smith. They were among the first lamps to employ bullet-shaped directional shades and flexible arms. These lamps were included in the Good Design exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, as was a chair she designed for Glenn of California. And this is her famous grasshopper lamp. Another Swedish designer featured in MoMA's Good Design exhibition was Greta von Nessen. The Swedish-born designer's early career was overshadowed by her German-born husband, Walter von Nessen. When he died suddenly in 1943, however, she took the reins of their American company, Nessen Studios, and began producing her own designs, as well as revising some of his pre-war classics. The Anywhere lamp is a marvel of post-war low-cost design. It can be positioned anywhere from table to wall or ceiling, and was manufactured in the classic industrial materials of aluminum and sheet steel, as seen in other lamps in this exhibition. It was priced at the time at $29.50, and the Anywhere lamp was exhibited in the inaugural Good Design exhibition at MoMA. She was born in Malmö, Sweden. Greta von Nessen was the daughter of an architect. She graduated from the School for Industrial Design Arts in Stockholm and later married German industrial designer Walter von Nessen, but the couple immigrated to the United States in 1925. Pop quiz, Greta von Nessen is actually the only woman to have her work of industrial design featured on a US postage stamp. So Greta von Nessen and her very popular Anywhere lamp at one point could be put on any piece of mail that you wanted to send throughout the US. And she's the only female industrial design woman to hold that title. Born in 1907, Lisa Johansson Papp studied at the Industrial Art Institute in Helsinki University of Art and Design, which is now the Aalto University of Art and Design. She graduated in 1928. She worked as a furniture designer and created carpets for the Friends of Finnish Handcraft before turning her attention to lighting design. She collaborated with the Stockman-owned lighting factory Orno from 1942, famously remarking that it was quite by accident that she became a design light artist. By education, I am a furniture designer, but I had to make lamps during the war. She had many notable designs, including the Lisa, Spilui, and Laura pendant lamps. The Spilui, often referred to by the English translation onion, resembles the form of a vegetable from which it was named. The angular design in opaline glass was awarded a gold medal at the Triennale di Milano in 1954, which was just one of several prizes Johanna Papp received in her career. She was also awarded a silver medal in the 1951 Triennial di Milano and the Pro Finlandia Prize in 1957. In 1950, she developed an interest in ceramics and glass, collaborating with historic Finnish glass factory Ittiala. In addition to the famous Milan Triennial exhibitions, Johanna Papp represented Finland in venues around the world. She provided the lighting figures for the Finnish display at the New York World Fair in 1939 and the Design in Scandinavia exhibition that traveled to multiple museums in the US in the mid-1950s. She also organized a Raya textile exhibition, which debuted in Helsinki in 1956 before it toured the Nordic countries and the rest of Europe. In 1960, she had a solo exhibition, Light, Glass, Metal, that opened in Helsinki, followed by 1966, a joint exhibition with her friend and textile artist Dora Jung in Stockholm. Johanna Papp was an active member of several national design organizations, including the Friends of Finnish Handcraft, which she joined in 1933 and chaired as artistic director from 1951 to 1985, so quite a long time as artistic director. Her commemorative Dora Jung exhibition toured many cities after it opened in Helsinki in 1983. She lectured and wrote extensively on the subject of lighting design, promoting Scandinavian modernist principles, which she believed to be a good light fixture must be simple, and its structure and function must be both neat and correct. A number of her lighting products are still actually being manufactured today. We have to remember really that before First World War, electric light was a luxury that only few households could afford. Mainly functional lights were produced for street lighting, factories, and shop windows. So at the beginning of the 1920s, electrical light really conquered households, displacing glass and kerosene, and became the standard in the apartments of nonprofit housing, where before it had not. But in terms of design, these lights really lacked any consistency. So disappointed by this lack of supply, in 1925, 1926, designers such as Moholy-Nagy and Marion Brandt designed the electrical lights for the buildings of the Bauhaus and Dessau themselves. Marion Brandt became the most important lighting designer actually at the Bauhaus, especially in collaboration with Hein Berdinski. Both worked very closely with the lighting engineers of the Candem company in Leipzig. The Bauhaus Dessau became a corporation with this company actually in February 1928, which initially consisted of the design revisions of factory drafts. So much of Brandt's energy was directed into her lighting designs, including collaborating with a small number of Bauhaus colleagues and students. These elegant pendant lights made of aluminum feature simple shades combined with a then innovative pulley system and counterweight, which allowed the height of the lamp to be adjusted with ease. And the pendant lights were used in multiple locations in the Dessau campus, including the metal, weaving, and architecture department, as well as even the dining room of Gropius's own house. And then you have with the Candem bedside lamp, number 702, designed in 1928, modernism also arrived aesthetically in the everyday lives of many people. The hood is long to protect the viewer from the glare of the raw bulb, and a pin attaches to the hood of the arm, allowing it to pivot slightly to help direct the light. And the wedge shape of the base helps in this regard as well, and also provides ergonomic access to the obvious on-off switch. So you know how many of us have kind of reached up into a lamp in our own home and have like searched for the on and off switch, fumbling around, hitting the shade or bumping the bulb. This was meant to be a sleek, modern design, easy to use in multiply produced factory settings. Another seminal figure in modernist design is Eileen Gray. Eileen Gray was born Catherine Eileen Moray. She was born into an aristocratic Irish family in 1878. She grew up in Brownswood, Count Wexford and divided her time between Ireland and London. In 1893, Eileen's mother inherited a peerage from a Scottish uncle, claiming her title as Baroness Grey. And from then on, Eileen and her siblings became known as the Greys. So Grey took her place at the Slade School of Fine Art in 1898, where she studied drawing and painting. Her father, James McLaurin Smith, was a landscape painter, so fine art probably seemed like a viable and familiar career option for Grey. Grey's studies ultimately didn't hold her attention, but something else caught her eye during those years. During trips to the Victoria and Albert Museum near her home in Kensington, Grey discovered Japanese and East Asian lacquerware, objects and furniture decorated with lacquer, which is a sap of a tree native to Japan. Grey moved to Paris in 1902, where she studied drawing at the Carnegie Museum, but once again didn't enjoy it. So by 1906, she'd made up her mind to focus on screens and panels instead, something useful as she saw it. She shot at the Japanese lacquer master Shizuo Suragawa, who agreed to train her in the technique. Grey immediately committed herself to the craft, taking particular interest in the red Negoro lacquer, an elegant minimalist style dating back to the 12th century, which she mixed with miyaki, a technique of sprinkling lacquer on the work and dusting it with decorative powder to make the design. And you can see some of her lacquerware in the far right of this image with the black screen in an installation at MoMA. Grey's early work from this period often featured figurative details, people, animals that owed to the symbolist movement, but she later created glossy screens that fused traditional Japanese craftsmanship with the abstract geometric principles. These pared back pieces with their thoughtful contemplation on form and material quickly brought her work to the attention of the Paris avant-garde. Lacquering is actually an extremely difficult technique that requires humid, dust-free conditions and usually 20 coats of carefully mixed resin, which take 2, 3, or even 4 days to completely dry. Japanese craftspeople traditionally make their lacquerwares at sea for the humidity. So Grey opted for the next best thing since she wasn't next to the sea, and she actually used her bathroom. Meanwhile, alongside her lacquer screens and cabinets, Grey also experimented with fabric and carpet designs. And in 1910, she also set up her own weaving studio. By the early 1920s, Grey had quickly established herself as one of the leading designers of lacquer furniture in Paris, and her next step was to open a shop. But opening up a shop in post-war Paris wasn't unusual in itself. What was unusual was actually having a woman in charge. So perhaps this explains why she decided to name the store after a man, Jean, and while her business card read Jean Desert et Grey, both masking her gender and creating ambiguity around the store's management. Grey designed the store in collaboration with architecture critic and editor Jean Badovitsky, with whom she had a romantic relationship and collaborated with professionally between 1926 and 1931. Within a few years, though, of opening Jean Desert, Grey had actually left her shop behind because their relationship together really was a catalyst for her to transition more into architecture. But part of that architecture was completing a complete work of art. So the interiors, everything was supposed to be part of the overall look and design, including even the lamps. So this brings us to the fascinating rocket lamp we see here. It was designed and first shown in Paris in 1923. It was thoughtfully placed in the boudoir of Monte Carlo that Grey designed. So made of dark wood, the base that sits on the floor is angular and has these sharp edges directly juxtaposed to the sleek rounded body in the middle. The center component of the lamp is composed of a light wood on the left with dark stripes on the right and sits comfortably in kind of that bottom sleeve, a feature which gives us an illusion of a rocket. The lampshade is a painted vellum and it's tall and flares at the end. arguably the most interesting part of the object. The lampshade has two additional triangular pieces on either side, paired with the geometric designs that are hand painted onto the shade. This feature, some people say it kind of looks a little bit like a face. Be interested to see what you think it looks like. But keeping in mind how consistently Gray incorporates function with the design of the pieces she created, it's really interesting to think of the interplay of the funky design of this lamp with the meant to be functional everyday use of it. Looking at the relationship in which the room that this lamp was placed, I included a picture here on the right. It's interesting to try to think about how this object is speaking to other objects in the room, the different geometric features that are in conversation with each other. And, I think some of the lamps that we've seen thus far are pretty straightforward modernist design, but there are also a few that ask us to kind of stretch our imaginations to think about what makes a lamp, but also in terms of sometimes lamps, when looking at them, all of a sudden develop a personality. Like, what characteristics does it take on from the perception of the viewer? And you're looking at this lamp specifically, which has a lot of personality, and it can evoke many personality traits the deeper we look. Perhaps it reminds you of an eccentric science professor you once had throughout a career, unconventional personality that is reflected in this object. And also, I think, and some of these, as we're looking through, makes us think about our own living spaces at home, and where would these various lamps fit, if they're even meant to fit in those living spaces at all. Do you already have an object at your home that kind of doubles with both its functionality and design, or do most of the lamps that you have at home strictly fulfill a function to light a space, and you don't necessarily think about the design of the lamp or have thought about the design of said lamp? And how did those everyday objects, come to your life and into your home? Did you purchase those lamps? What about those lamps drew you to them? Again, was it just merely the function of lighting, or was there a different aspect that grabbed your attention, whether it be stylistic or whether it be material? And speaking of material, one material that we haven't covered is also a technological advancement, in addition to just being able to light a room, but the combination of lighting a room and 3D printing. That was epitomized by the Front Design's materialized sketch of a chandelier. So the four members of Front Design, they design objects, furniture, and interiors that explore the process of making and question the conventional role of the designer. So the Design By series was first exhibited in Milan in 2004, marked the beginning of this self-referential study. Rather than presiding over the formal process as creator, Front illustrates an impersonal approach to design in which random factors intervene to determine the formal results. Their Design By Rats wallpaper, for example, is determined by the amorphic shapes and voids left in a roll of plain white paper that was, you might have guessed, gnawed on by rats. So when this new white wallpaper is applied on top of old wallpaper or colored wall, it is the series of voids that produce the pattern, revealing old motifs and colors through the holes. In 2004, Front designed the interior of the Tensta Kunsthal Art Gallery in Stockholm. Their designs allow and encourage visitors to effect changes to the gallery's environment. Feet wear away the painted floor in patterns, exposing a secondary color beneath the top coat. Plastic chairs are available for different seating groups and can be arranged by guests at will. Thousands of plastic hooks display visitors' coats and hats as an ever-changing wall display. So these changes are meant to be gradual so that every time you visit, something essentially looks differently. Again, they're unseating the role of designer as preeminent decision maker and allowing for nature and human error and human behavior to dictate design. Front design is in demand all over the world and is one of Sweden's actually most successful design exporters. Materialized sketch of a chandelier uniquely represents the profound influence of digital technologies on designing and making contemporary objects. The Swedish designers literally drew the shape of the chandelier in space with a motion capture wand connected to digital modeling software. The resulting digital model was 3D printed, materializing the proposed object without any direct content from the designer's hands. So dating to 2005, this work was on the leading edge, actually, of digital design and production. So much of lighting is the mechanism, the function of lighting a room, but also a lot of the lamps that we are lucky enough to have in our collection, both Front Design and Studio Drift. They are using interesting processes. And so it's important just to be able to give you a better sense, because it's one thing for us to say that this is how individually plucking dandelion leaves work, but it's another thing to see it actually happen. And the same thing with Front Design, to stop motion capture, then 3D printed. So just to give you a better sense rather than just through words, but also through visuals as well. The Front Design, again, was founded in 2004 by 4 young women fresh out of design school. And Front embraced an impersonal approach to design in which random factors intervene to determine formal results, as you saw with the video and as I discussed in the wallpaper by rats. So in the sketch series, the designers transform ideas into objects in a single step by using a motion capture pen, again, to draw furnishings in space, which define digital design files. The files then are 3D printed, as you saw, that vat to materialize the sketch and make the object real. The series at the time was especially exciting because it represents the digital influence on both designing, they're using that stop motion pen, so that's the designing, but then also the making is also 3D printed, so digital influence on both. Another individual who was very interested in the future and digital was architect, design innovator, entrepreneur, and university professor Carlotta Di Bellecqua, is the vice president and CEO of Armatide and president of Danza Milano, a division of Italian light manufacturer Armatide. Born and raised, educated, and based in Milan, she was trained as an architect, graduating with a degree in architecture, but she found her true calling away from creating structures. She focused on lighting their interiors and transforming the spaces and ideally people within, as she described it. Growing up in Milan shaped her interests, visions, and her creative spirit. Milan, she said, has always been at the heart of design culture, not least because of its proximity to manufacturing districts that made it possible to implement ideas developed in this environment. Having been raised in Milan in a family steeped in the creative process, art, and culture, her mother, who was also in architecture, was deeply encouraging in both her ambition and curiosity growing up. Technological humanism is a term coined by her and her team, and it is at the core of the legacy that she's striving to leave behind. Her and her team believe that sustainable light design means being responsible for our common future. And in creating this future, she realized how important it is to involve and support the visions of future generations in creating new innovations. So since 2001, she has been a university professor at the design faculty of the Milan Pilotech and guest professor at a number of Italian and international academic institutions, including the recent collaboration with the Alta Scuola Politecnica. She contributes significantly to conventions and workshops exploring changes in contemporary society and businesses, the new frontiers of research, and the evolving needs of the environment. Another individual very much in tuned and interested in the environment is Ala Serfata, which she became known for her soma, these wonderfully beautiful handcrafted sculptural lights named after a Greek term that describes the human body. She chose this name to enlighten the poetic qualities of her objects, which largely reveal the levels of abstraction that nature can project. Ayala Serfata was born in Tel Aviv in 1962. She studied fine art at the Academy of Art and Design in Jerusalem, and after graduating from the Middlesex Polytech in London, she settled in Tel Aviv, where she has lived and worked ever since. In 1996, she co-founded Aqua Creations Lighting and Furniture Atelier, acting as the atelier's design and creative director until establishing her own art studio. For over 20 years, Serfata has exhibited in museums and galleries worldwide. Her solo shows were held at the Tel Aviv Museum of Art and Sculptural Museum Beleden Anyanzen, Den Haag. She participated in group shows in such museums as London Design Museum, just to name one of the many places that have featured her gorgeous works of art. Since the 1990s, Ala Serfata has forged a unique path in the world of contemporary design, creating and crafting conceptual lights and furniture. Her work has been described by scholars as multidisciplinary, a fusion of art, craft, and design, as diffusing the line between the natural and the abstract, as you can see in these various examples of pillared lights and also wall-mounted lights. Her approach focuses on ancient traditions, striving to revive their spirit and energies in unorthodox, unexpected, and innovative matter. Another innovator is an artist and lighting designer, Lynn Godley work, which explores the relationship again between art and technology while investigating the impact on the viewer or user. She is inspired by the interaction of light with materials, with form and imagery, and with the viewer. And so her work ranges greatly in its final form, from drawing to sculpture to large-scale installation. Apparently to her, it is not the final genre that defines her art, but rather the effect of light experienced, which is a theme that has come across throughout today's session, this experience of lighting. I think one could say you also have an experience in industrial designed spaces, and you also have an experience within setting a table and the ceramics on said table. But for a lot of these designers and lighting experiences is so instrumental into their overall work and ethos. They're really focused on the interaction specifically with the user and the lighting instrument and the overall glow, ambiance, whatever term you want to use, that the lamp gives to the overall experience of a room. So from highly detailed pixels of light embedded into drawings to public art installations, Godley explores the many moods of lighting and its ability to calm or excite. Merging a wide range of lighting sources and materials that interact with light, she creates layered environments that play with themes of interactive observation, movement, and user behavior. For Godley, lighting brings magic to any environment, energizing space with color and movement. It transforms the ordinary into the spectacular, using light not only at night, but also during the day through reflective materials, manipulation of sunlight and shadow. Her studio designs for environments that engage poetically with the audience 24/7, creating interactive environments using rich blends of technologies and materials, such as diachronic films that change color as the viewers move past, or reflective surfaces that change as light moves across the surface to allow for interaction with the environment or audience. And then even teaming up with lighting applications and physical computing that change color and movement through solid state technology or applications of video projection. So it's really your art and science brain come into play with a lot of these modern lighting designers. Her work with light for large-scale public spaces has allowed her to investigate cutting-edge lighting technologies, from programmable LEDs to large format video applications and projections. Interactive capabilities allows the viewers to take part in the work in ways that range from simply creating change by moving past, so it's literally just by walking past the work, to actively participating with the experience and interactive engagement with multisensory components, using light again to create these environments that are either meant to calm you or re-enliven you or engage you. Another very engaging lighting designer who hopes to receive a response when you view her work, and for it to be an experience in real space, is Brooklyn-based designer Katie Stout. She describes her work as naive pop, a characterization of furniture as it is traditionally understood and of the motifs of suburban domestic life. She utilizes a diverse range of media and often unexpected techniques. Her expansive body of work includes seating, shelving, mirrors, carpets, curtains, and lighting. Stout's practice is shaped by an urge to subtly subvert utilitarian forms and function to create an experience that pushes just past the threshold of what is comfortable, encouraging her audience to consider elements of the so-called deranged and demented in their everyday lives. Her work is refreshingly disarming in its simultaneous sense of dark irony and the joyful celebration of childhood innocence that it really evokes. Stout's intention is to peel back some of the layers of seriousness often associated with the concept of design, as well as the melodrama, as she says, of family household life. So the pieces are meant to be well used, elevating the idea of wear and tear as a welcome part of each work's narrative. Stout's career to date boasts an impressive array of highlights, including a furniture collaboration with Brian Melgard for his installation at the 2014 Whitney Biennial, her fantastical bedroom curio exhibition at Design Miami in 2015, and even for the New York Rick Owens campaign and winning the first season of HGTV series Ellen's Design Challenge, also in 2015. She's been listed in Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2017, and she even collaborated with Jeremy Scott on his Fall and Winter 2018 collection, which inspired her to launch her own clothing collection in 2019. Her work has been featured in the Museum of Contemporary Art and Santa Barbara's 2000 exhibition Free Play. She's also she is based in New York, and as you can see from this wide range of lighting, she is definitely not afraid to play and invites individuals to view the lamps and really rethink their version of lamp in their head to be a little bit more playful and a little bit more out of the box. Also based in New York is the American lighting designer Lindsley Aldman. Her one-of-a-kind fixtures, known for their pop sensibility, a little different version of pop than Katie's that we just saw, and her use of raw materials. They're also playful, but there's a playfulness that seems a little bit like more romantic in a sense, if again you want to put adjectives to some of these things. So her signature pieces include her vine-like fringe wall lights and her seminal branching blown glass bubble chandelier that you can see on the left. Born in New York in 1968, Aldman discovered industrial design while working as an editorial assistant at the Smithsonian Institute, actually. After graduating from the Rhode Island School of Design, she moved to Seattle to work with the Resolute Lighting Company before eventually returning to New York and launching Butter, a collaboration with fellow RISD graduate David Weeks. One of their first projects was Lunette, a glass fiber clip-on lamp, which earned both a Design Distinction Award in ID's 1999 Annual Design Review and an Editor's Choice Award in Lighting. In 2006, Aldman founded her Epinomis Studio in Manhattan. Here she produced the branching bubble, a hand-blown glass chandelier, emblematic of her dreamlike futuristic aesthetic. Other popular evolutions include her You Make It series, which allows clients to actually customize their own fixture with easy to assemble pieces. Cherry Bomb is another one of her works. It's a glamorous take on cherry trees. And the Glamp is another series, and that marries delicate blown glass with the industrial edge of a pewter vise. And so here she's looking up at one of her wonderful medleys of glass and metal with her futuristic aesthetic. And speaking of glass, I wanted to close today's session with a maker and designer a little closer to home, Margaret Spacapan. Following the switch from mathematics to art, and after finishing her undergraduate studies at Tulane University with a Bachelor of Fine Art, with specifically a degree in glass sculpture and printmaking, Margaret Spacapan moved to Pittsburgh. At the Pittsburgh Glass Center, Spacapan began blowing and cutting her signature sleek style of lighting and tableware. When not playing with glass on the end of a blowpipe, Spacapan actually works as an outreach assistant for the Pittsburgh Glass Center, fostering its cohort of makers and working alongside fellow local contemporary artists. And these are two examples of her work. One is her take of a chandelier, and the other one is a pendant lamp that is actually currently being featured in our exhibition Locally Sourced in our Charity Randall Gallery, and will be on display into the new year. So if you'd like to see it in person, please do come to the museum and check it out. One of the wonderful things about Margaret is, I think it comes from her background in mathematics, that she is very systematic about her forms and the uses of her forms. So the chandelier, for example, those little half moon bowls, they also, if they didn't have a hole in them, they would be her goblet line, which you can also buy at the Pittsburgh Glass Center if you so choose. And similarly, the pendant lamp, again, if it didn't have a space in it for a light bulb to go in, that they share similar shapes and forms for her bowl series. So she's really applying, in some ways, it's that bridge of last session about setting a table. So the objects that we use to serve and host, then being similar shapes and forms and vessel-like structures that can be transitioned into lighting a space. So with that, I will leave time for any questions that anybody might have.
Alyssa, sorry, I'm trying to turn on my camera. If anybody was interested in Margaret's work, since she's local, is it available?
It is, yes. So for tableware, definitely go to the Pittsburgh Glass Center. You can get both those goblets I was mentioning and also those bowls. I would say if you're interested in any of her lighting, she does have a website, which I can quickly find and put in the chat. I would just reach out to her directly for her lighting pieces.
All right, well, once again, you can put questions or in the chat, and you're welcome to do so throughout the course in case you're afraid you're going to lose track of something. Okay, there we go. Alyssa just added the link for Margaret's work. Yeah, her work is really beautiful in person too. I know Alyssa said to check it out in the galleries, and I would echo that, as well as the works that are on view in Extraordinary Ordinary Things. If there aren't any other questions, we'll let everybody go to enjoy this glorious fall day. And we hope you'll be back next week for one more session to learn about women in furniture design.
Thank you all for being with us.
All right. Bye. Thank you.